Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you bring into focus the true cost of college and how to tackle the runaway cost of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Beatrice Schultz, a certified financial planner and founder of Westface College Planning. Now, here's your host for College Smart Radio, Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. Early decision, early action, restrictive early decision. What do those terms mean? What's the difference between the different plans? And how do you know if either is it the right application choice for your student? On today's show, my guest Eddie LaMeire of LaMeire College Consulting. My guest is Eddie LaMeire of LaMeire College Consulting, and we're going to discuss early decision and early action and help you understand the pros and cons of both. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is all about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With some private schools costing well over $60,000 a year, a UC costing $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on my experience, I share my insights with you week in and week out. I'm the owner of the San Carlos-based college planning business, Westface College Planning, and I host workshops and webinars on college planning and consult with parents on a daily basis. In addition to my insights, I bring in experts in many areas of the college process, from counselors, financial professionals, financial aid officers, student coaches, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. In addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information on our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles that I've authored with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway cost of college. I also have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning, and we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that I host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show. My guest on today's College Smart Radio show has been a popular guest on College Smart Radio. Last fall, we discussed what defines a great extracurricular profile and how to build one. And this past spring, he was a guest on the show discussing standardized testing, the SAT and ACT. Podcasts of both of those shows are available on our College Smart Radio archives, which you can listen to from our College Smart Radio website. In the studio with me is Eddie LaMeire. Eddie has served on boards with the National Association of College Admission Counselors and was trained at the Southern Association of College Admissions Counselors. He worked in private college admissions at Loyola University for 3 years, and he worked at the University of California for 5 years. For the past 6 years, Eddie has worked as an independent consultant. He is the owner of LaMeire College Consulting in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've invited him here today to talk about early decision and early action. What does that mean, and how do you know if it's something you should be considering? Hi, Eddie. Welcome back to College Smart Radio.
And Beatrice, we will be addressing all of those issues in a show lasting 24 hours because they are incredibly complex, as we spoke about earlier. So we're going to do our best to sort of winnow them down into a little bit more of a simpler formula.
Well, I really appreciate you being here, Eddie, because so many of my parents will ask me questions about early decision, early action, and then they come up with all the restrictive early action that I get lost, and I'm always having to refer to someone else to get the answers. So let's start. What are they about? Why do they exist? What are they?
Yeah, well, in terms of why they exist, like anything in college admissions, it really is ultimately for the gain of the university. They want to get students in the seats. They want to ensure that they have a constant flow of students coming in. They want to make sure their bond rating is strong. They want to make sure their alumni are happy. So the more students you can get in, the more students you can lock in, the better off you're going to wind up being. We really have two basic plans that we're dealing with. Early decision, where you apply. If you get in, you have to go. And early action. You apply early, you get a response early. If you get in, you can make a call whether you want to go or whether you don't want to go. There are many permutations to each of these. If we have the time and if we have the energy, maybe we can get into them. But for right now, let's just kind of focus on those two guys because that'll make the easiest way to do it. Decision, you decide early. The school decides early. Have to go. Action, you apply early. If you get in, you don't have to go. Okay,
and so just for our audience that's listening in, and maybe they don't even have kids in high school yet, and they're like, huh? I mean, when you're applying for college, you used to just think, hey, the applications are due in November, and we're going to find out your results in April. So this is this alternative parallel path you may choose with specific colleges.
Exactly. With the University of California, for instance, the way you've described it is perfect. One application deadline, November 30th, that's it. Boom, done. With the private schools, you have the regular decision deadline, which is typically January 1st, and then you have these kind of early guys, which usually hover around November 1st, where you apply by that date. The school will get back to you with a decision by about December 15th, letting you know if you got in or if you were denied. And that's pretty much the way that it goes. If you get in for early decision, again, you have to go. If you don't get in, you obviously don't have to go. For early action, you have the choice.
Okay, so you're a student. What's the advantage of choosing a school or applying early decision?
Okay, well, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. For applying early decision, the one where you're locked in, where you have to go. Now, we've already established that schools like to get butts in the seats. They want to get students in there where they're locked in. They have students that they're filling up the freshman class. That being the case, it's going to be a little bit easier to get in for early decision under an early decision plan than a regular decision plan. For instance, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, regular admit rate 14%, early decision admit rate 31%.
So hold on a second. So let's kind of dissect what does that statistic mean? That means of the people that apply early, 31% are being accepted. And that's early decision, you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
And then of the regular admission, everyone, it's 14%.
Exactly.
So would you say that means any idea if you're the same rated student with the same GPA, are you more likely to get in early than in regular?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly it. Not only is that the case, but I mean, to give you the other side of the coin, when you look at the schools that do have early decision, if you apply regular decision, not only do you not get that little advantage, that little early decision bonus, but you're also, if you apply regular decision to that school, competing for far fewer seats. For instance, Penn, the one that we just talked about, the University of Pennsylvania takes about 48% of their freshman class from the ED pool. So, if you apply regular decision to Penn, not only do you not get that bonus, but you're competing for almost only half the seats as a regular decision applicant. So it's a double whammy. If you apply early, you get that bonus. If you don't apply early, not only do you not get the bonus, but you're competing for far fewer seats in the freshman class.
Okay, so it sounds like that's a good advantage of early decision. What would be the drawback?
If the student's not prepared, because when you apply for early decision, you're applying, like I mentioned, typically by November 1st. That means that the school's not going to see your 7th semester, your first semester senior year GPA. So if you have a weak junior year, you're going to not show that great as an early decision or early action applicant. Let's focus on early decision. You're not going to show too well as an early decision applicant. Additionally, if you need additional test scores in November or December, or sometimes January, as some schools will accept, you're not going to be able to get those in. Usually the latest test scores that an early decision school will accept will be October test scores. So if you're not prepared academically, it could work against you. It could be a drawback. In terms of finances also, I mean, you do disallow yourself, you do restrict yourself in terms of comparing financial aid offers. So that's another disadvantage.
But not so much at the early decision, you don't restrict yourself, but the early action you would more.
Well, in both cases, you're not going to really be able to compare and contrast aid offers that'll wind up coming in with different schools. Because most aid offers are going to wind up coming in the spring. And if you've already committed to yourself to a school in the fall, you apply to Penn, you get in, you're not going to be able to see how much NYU would have given you. You're not going to be able to see how much Dartmouth would have given you. You wouldn't be able to see how much Santa Clara would have given you.
Right. Well, that just showed I, of course, went forward and backward on this early action, early decision, the terms, because I find, I talk to half the clients who are like, no, I think that's early decision, that's early action. So actually, I'll reinforce what you said, which is a big deal. Oftentimes you'll hear in the news that that the most needy kids are going to be worse off. But the truth is, it's the middle needy kids too. Most of these schools have money. A lot of the private schools that offer these early decisions, they have money and they have a formula, and you do fit into the formula. It's the special cases that you may be able to appeal if, for example, you have 4 or 5 offers and you're like, you are my top choice, but I'd like to appeal to see if you can offer me more. That's where you don't have that flexibility. So it's good to even look at these early decision schools when you're as part of your decision-making process to say, is this a school that is really formula-driven and doesn't seem to be one of these schools that negotiates? We had to use that word in this business.
Yeah, and another thing, too, is, when I work with students with early decision and deciding on applying early decision, more often than not, unless the student is applying to one of those schools that promises to meet 100% of need, has eliminated loans from the financial aid package, has a massive endowment, is going to meet a good amount of need with gift aid. Unless the student is applying to one of those schools, Columbia, Penn, Dartmouth, Johns Hopkins, Rice, I'll usually dissuade them from applying to a school like Boston University or something like that, early decision. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not going to be the best return on investment, as we spoke about a little bit earlier, and you might be saddled with a good number of loans that are going to wind up being used to meet your financial need, and that's not something that anybody needs right now, especially if, for argument's sake, you're applying to, like, the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU, where you're just going to make grainy indie films for 4 years, and at the end of the day have a loan amount that totals $250,000. Who needs that? I mean, with the top tier schools that'll give a lot of gift aid, I push students for that. For the mid tier schools, for ED, not so much. You're locking yourself into a real big financial commitment that the school might not be able to pick up.
I think and that's exactly what I would recommend for my students too. If you can identify which one, and the other part of it, which we kind of haven't talked about, is, are you sure that's the college you want to go to? I mean, we've kind of talked about it, how the student looks, how the school looks at it, but for a student, it's now October of your senior year. You're a full year from starting in college. Are you ready to make that final decision that this is absolutely where you want to go?
And not only that, I mean, you look at what's at stake. I mean, we just went over the numbers for Penn. I mean, you're looking at like double the admit rate for early decision, and they're taking half of their class from that pool. You almost have to apply early decision to a school like Penn if you want to have a snowball's chance of getting in. You really do. I mean, you're applying RD is not going to be something but for the most competitive students from the highest tier, highfalutin prep schools. So unfortunately, after 11, 12 years of higher education, this is kind of what it winds up coming down to for a lot of students. How are you going to strategize with the application plan? Are you going to apply a month and a half earlier than you otherwise would have, 2 months earlier? That's what it comes down to. It's absolutely ridiculous, but that's what the game is right now.
So that's interesting that you've mentioned Penn a couple of times. I mean, so for kids, is that one? I mean, is that different than the other colleges? I mean, do they seem to really push it? And what's your typical profile of a kid who wants to go to Penn?
With Penn, I mean, it's going to be similar to the rest of the top tier schools, at least as far as admit rate. Like Penn, I was saying, regular decision admit rate 14%, ED 31%. Johns Hopkins 16% regular, 40% early. Amherst 11% regular, 39% early. All of these schools at the top level, there is such an advantage to applying early decision statistically, and such a disadvantage to applying regular decision that they force the issue.
Hey, you're with us on College Smart Radio, where my guest today is Eddie LaMeire, the owner of LaMeire College Consulting. And Eddie and I have been discussing early decision and early action college application options. We're going to be right back after a quick break.
For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. College Smart Radio continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. Contact Beatrice Schultz at collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Now, back to College Smart Radio with your host Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs is a smart thing to know. To help families be on this radio show, I host community workshops live and via webinar several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. My next live workshop will be here at the KDOW studio in Fremont at noon on Thursday, August 22nd. All listeners are welcome, but you do need to reserve your seat. You can reserve your seat on my College Smart Radio website. I look forward to meeting you there. If you've just joined us on today's show, I've been talking with my guest, Eddie LaMeire, about early decision and early action college application choices. Eddie, we were just talking about trying to understand the difference between early decision and early action. But we were mostly, talking about early decision. And during the break, we talked about, I asked you, so do colleges offer both? How do you choose between the two? And maybe you can answer that question for the audience.
Yeah, just about every school is going to offer one plan or the other. For instance, Harvard offers single-choice early action. Stanford offers single-choice early action. The University of Pennsylvania offers early decision. Santa Clara offers early action. There's almost in no case will there be a school that will offer both plans. Everybody will offer a regular decision plan, a single deadline, generally that students have to get everything back in. Not everybody offers early decision and early action, and people that offer, or schools that offer one, will typically not offer the other. So it's usually early decision or early action.
Okay. And is it common that people might be put on a wait list or told you're going to go in automatically, you be put in regular decision? Or what are the kind of options of answers you might get when you apply?
Ooh, very good question. For if a student is, let's start off with the easiest way to do it. If a student is denied early decision or early action, they cannot reapply regular decision or regular decision, regular action. It's the same thing. But they cannot reapply, and that's something that would be another disadvantage to applying early. And what we were saying earlier, the 7th semester grades, if they're not in yet, if they're not strong enough, and the student does apply, they're not going to have the option to reapply when those grades do come in. So they're locked out. You apply once, you don't get in, you're done.
Okay, so that's a good reason why students might not choose to do this route.
Exactly, especially, again, if they have that weak junior year that they need 7th semester in order to bring up.
Is that rule the same for early action? Typically?
Yeah,
okay.
it's exactly the same.
The same rules. If you apply early, you can't just go back and apply regular.
Exactly.
So it's not always a great idea just to send out all the darts and see which one hits.
Exactly. No, you want to be putting your best foot forward, and you want to be able to present a profile that's going to be competitive. The other options are going to be a student is admitted. So if a student's denied, they can't do anything else. They're basically done. If a student is admitted, in the case of early decision, they have to go, unless they can't afford it or there's a medical issue.
And that's an interesting point, because I've definitely had families who called me and said, well, we've been accepted early, we've been accepted, so we have to go. We've already said that we're going to go, and well, what do we do? Can we still keep our applications open elsewhere? And I understand the rules are you just basically notify every other college that you have accepted.
Exactly. In theory, you're supposed to withdraw all of your applications. In practice, it's not like any of these rules have any teeth, so nobody can force you to do anything. But in theory, you want to be a good ethical college applicant. You pull all the applications and inform them that, hey, I've been accepted early decision, I have to go to this school. If you don't do that, and in the event that you wind up turning down an early decision, without good reason, without the medical reason or the financial reason, they're not going to be able to hold your feet to the fire and make you go, except what's going to happen is that the students at your school for the next several years are not going to get a very good shake on the application, because the university is going to think that the counselor did not adequately explain what early decision really means.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah. I have some clients who have a student at St. Francis, a private school down here on the peninsula in Mountain View. And they were saying that, and they were talking about the great statistics that they have about previous graduates, who's gotten into which colleges. And that's a really interesting point, that you can kind of sabotage your own school's results going forward with that type of activity.
Oh, yeah.
The out of, if you can't afford it, you can't go. Well, if you follow the rules and you pull your applications from everywhere else, then you can't go anywhere because you haven't been accepted anywhere else. So if money feels like it's going to be a big issue and you're worried that the college formulaically you may not qualify for as much money as you like, that really can be a good reason, even though it may be risky about whether you're going to get in, to put off an early decision or an early action application. It's hard, though. That's part of kind of that family decision, but it can sometimes be that decision about whether you're going to drive a BMW or a Chevrolet also. We make those decisions in life.
Exactly. And that's really what has to go into the process, is that this is something where in some cases it's going to be, this has always been my dream school. We have the means to afford it. There's a big decision between the RD and ED acceptance rate. Boom. Let's apply early decision, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But more often than not, it's going to be the case where there is some deciding, there are some sacrifices to be made, and potentially the student might not opt to do early decision. So this is something that's always going to require a little bit of juggling on the family's part and discussion on the family's part. Now, we've mentioned that a student can be denied or admitted. Just to let you know, there's a third option. A student can be deferred to the regular decision pool. Now, some schools make a habit of deferring every student that's not admissible in the early round to the regular pool. Georgetown does that, for instance.
Okay.
On the flip side, there's a contrasting philosophy. Stanford. If Stanford does not accept you, or they do not think that you're going to be able to compete in the regular decision round, they will flat out deny you for early action. So they don't string anybody along. Georgetown will string people along and just defer them to RD to see how they're going to compete with the other students.
Any idea statistic-wise how many of those deferred kids actually get acceptance, or even from the students you might run into in your practice?
Georgetown, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yep.
The majority of other ones, about 10%. You're deferred to RD, you're going to be about 10%. Same thing with waitlist. You wind up going to the waitlist, you're looking at about a 5 to 10% possibility of being pulled off the waitlist. Now it's going to be a whole lot less, just because more schools are using waitlists and they're accepting more students, and what are called yields are all over the place. But you wind up getting deferred, your odds probably aren't going to look that great. You wind up getting waitlisted, your odds probably aren't going to look that great.
Okay. And so I don't know if you threw the statistics at us earlier, but what percentage of private schools offer some kind of early admission process?
I would think that, just about every private school in the top 50 in the country is going to offer either EA or ED. Just because they want to have the numbers in early. Even a school like, for instance, USC. USC doesn't offer anything called early action or early decision. They offer a priority or a scholarship deadline of December 1st. You might as well just consider that kind of an early action type thing, because it's a little bit earlier than everybody else. The school is not locking you into anything, but they're using that as a barometer to see how interested you are in the school. Will you apply early? And they also want to see what their numbers are going to be for the coming year. So not to complicate issues further, but there are a lot of permutations, like I said earlier, of these decision plans. There's early decision 2, there's restrictive, non-restrictive, there's priority deadlines, there's scholarship deadlines, and parents will be confused. If you're not confused, you're not doing enough research.
And if you're not confused yet, I'm just going to kind of reiterate the fact that if you apply to a college early decision, it means when you apply, you're committed that you will go to that school if they accept you. So you can only apply to one school early decision. There's all these other little rules around there, but that's a big deal as far as your decision-making process. So how many public schools have an early decision or early action program?
A good amount of public schools will have an early action program, especially out-of-state schools like North Carolina, Virginia, Michigan. They'll have early action schools or a priority deadline. Purdue has the same thing as USC, where there's a priority scholarship deadline of November 15th. In terms of early decision, where you're locked in, you apply early, you gotta go, the only one I've ever seen, oddly enough, is Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. There are just no other schools in the country, no other public schools. And please, if people have heard of them, email me, let me know. I've never seen another public school that offers ED. Cal Poly does. It's a popular school. Everything's always impacted. It's a Cal State, so they're going to have a different demographic of students. So presumably they felt the need to do this at some level, but it's really unusual that that's the one in the 2,500 schools in the country that does it.
Well, Cal Poly is already a little bit unique because you've got to choose your major when you're applying also.
Exactly. You're basically locked in there too. So if you really want to restrict your choices, apply early decision to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. You can't get out of the contract and you can't change your major.
And I mean, it's got a great reputation and a good ROI, but it's interesting. And actually, I don't know. We don't know for sure why the colleges choose to do it, but they can.
Yeah.
And people are applying that way, so that helps them out. Now, we've talked about kind of this early decision, early action. Let's talk a little bit about the non-standard plans. Like, what does it mean, early decision 2? And I have to honestly tell you, I just thought it was a later deadline, but I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, early decision 2, and we spoke about this a little bit before the show. It's something that was developed about 10 years ago, might as well have been 10 minutes ago, 10 years ago, where schools that are not necessarily the top-tier schools, but let's just call them the second-tier schools. Like, for instance, the perfect example is NYU, New York University. If a student applies early decision, for instance, to the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business, which everybody wants to go to that's interested in business, they apply by November 1st. In the event that they're denied, they will be denied by December 15th. NYU, in their infinite wisdom, said to themselves, hey, we can kind of scavenge off the students that are denied early decision for the top-tier schools. We will implement a program where a student will be locked in, early decision, but they have to apply just by the regular deadline. So now NYU offers a program, among other schools, NYU offers a program, Early Decision 2, where students can commit themselves to the school by the regular deadline. They have to go if they get in, and their application will receive that ED weight that the schools so covet. They want those ED applicants coming in. So it's basically the NYU's kind of bottom feeding off of the rejects of like in this case. I mean, NYU's never going to bottom feed, but
sure.
You know where I'm going.
Well, it's an interesting point because you applied early decision, but you may have other applications out that you did early action earlier. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so. I guess just maybe give us just a couple of seconds to conclude. I mean, are there any other things you can keep in mind, or what do you want every parent to walk away from this thinking about in this decision, or every student that might be listening in?
Do your research. You have to know the statistics. You have to know the numbers. You have to know the strategy. As much as everybody wants to say on the application, be yourself and go with your instinct. This is turning into a business, and this is turning into a multi-billion-dollar business. And the strategy that you can use to leverage yourself in this business is an early plan. That's just the way that you have to think of it. Education is not for the faint of heart anymore. You really have to have a battle plan.
Oh, Eddie, thanks so much for joining us on College Smart Radio.
Always my pleasure. Sorry if I confused everybody over the last half hour.
Oh, no, it's perfect. Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. Well, you can hear us each week here on 1220 AM KDOW. And for a link to a podcast of the show or a prior weekly show, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio. We look forward to sharing more helpful information with you next week.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with certified financial planner Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. Join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.